Hello everybody, welcome back to another HR Studios tutorial. Now today we're going to be working on giving ourselves the ability to equip weapons. So in the previous tutorial we set it up to where we could equip our armor, and now what we're going to be doing is making sure that we can actually equip our weapon and change, of course, our animation state. Now keep in mind that we're not actually going to be covering the animation side of the tutorial because that's not what the inventory system is about. But I will show you a brief demonstration on how that's set up. But the first thing that we want to do is go over to your equipment script, and we got to update one thing inside the equipment type enum value, which of course is adding in a weapon. Now anytime that you add something to this equipment type value right here, you're going to need to update everything else that is referenced to it or calls it inside of a reference. So the best and easiest way to be able to find all those is if you right click this object right here, especially if you're using Visual Studios. And all you need to do is look up find all references. And what this does is it will pull up a list of all the scripts that actually use this equipment type, right? So as you can see, if I select the first one right here, we're going to be using it right here, so we can do that. So if I select the second one right here, it brings us up inside of the character script, which of course, as you can see, we have our head, body, pants, feet, and all you need to do is add in a case for our equipment type dot weapon. Okay, so same thing as before, and we're going to get more into that later, so I'm not going to look into that just now. But yes, just make sure that you go through every single one of these conditions and make sure that they have the condition for this. Like say for instance right here, we have the switch index value, so make sure that you add that index there as well. And you can just, like I said, just go through every single one and make sure that you add that in there. Now another thing that we have to discuss is that anytime that you update the script, say for instance, if we go over to, let me actually close this right here. Say for instance, whenever we set up our character data, right? If you recall, we had this set to 4 instead of the previous tutorials because we only had 4 slots available. So what we want to do here is change this value to 5. And then whenever you go back to your class, so say for instance, if we go back over here into Unity, go over to our scriptable objects, and we select, say for instance, our character sheet, and we select our player, you need to make sure that you update this as well, because it's not going to automatically update. It will only update whenever you create a brand new player character data class. Okay, so just keep that in mind as well. All right, so let's get on into the meat of the tutorial though. So what we're going to do is we're going to create this brand new script called the weapons script. Now this right here is also a scriptable object. So what I want you guys to do is go over to your scripts folder, find your classes folder, and then you're simply going to right click, go over to create C# script, and then type in weapon. Now for weapons, the reason why we're creating a separate script for them versus it just being an equipment script is because we want to be able to instantiate a game object. And you can add in specific variables inside of this class that we can instantiate on the game object that we equip. But for now, this is how we're going to be setting it up just for demonstrational purposes. So once you have that weapon class set up, we're going to make it a subclass of our equipment. That way we can still equip it to our equipment slot. It's going to have extra variables. As for how we create this asset, we're simply going to run the create asset menu function. Make sure that the menu name is equal to whatever you want it to be. Mine, of course, is this right here. You don't have to put that if you don't want to put it. That's okay. We're going to require a public game object called weapon prefab. This is simply the object that we're going to be instantiating. And we also have a public animator override controller called anim override control. Now the animator override controller allows us to be able to switch the controller at runtime on our character's animation or animator, and it's very, very handy, especially if you want to be able to switch from using a bow or a staff or a sword or whatever, right? It's very, very handy. Okay, so we already covered the character data, so I'm not going to go back over that again. What I want you to do now is open up your character class script, okay? And inside there, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to add in two new functions or two new variables. The first one is a public animator called anim. The second one is a public animator override controller called default controller. The default controller is essentially just your character without any weapons whatsoever. So they're just able to run, walk, and do whatever they want to do without any form of weapons in their hand, okay? We're going to roll down, and we also added this new area right here called a header, which of course is a weapon equipable hands. And right now we only really want the weapon to be inside the right hand, right? Because, you know, that's typically what people do. They would be swinging with the right hand, not really their left hand. So we have a public transform called right hand. You will need to assign this value, and this value is basically just on your armature. You're just going to scroll down and you're going to find the hand. So just go through your bones and find wherever your right hand is, and that's basically where you want to be able to go to equip it. Now, if you take a look at this character, though, right here, we have two different slots here. We have the hand IKR, and then we also have this this hand right here, which is, of course, for the IK. Make sure that you have this as the lowest point inside of your parent, because what's going to happen is we're going to be deleting any form of object that is going to be below it. So even though this is technically the hand, we're going to be using this as our hand, okay? And how we set that up is if you select our player ref, make sure that you grab the anim as our human right here. And as for the default controller, that's something that you can create simply by right-clicking, go over to create, go over and find animator override controller. From there, you can simply just assign it. The base controller, of course, is going to be what you're going to have as the initial setup. And for our initial setup, we only have one controller setup, really, which I can actually go to that real fast. So if I select our animator right here, this is the state of our current human controller, right? So for me to be able to gain access to that, all I need to do is select what controller I want it to go off of, which of course is our default anim controller. And as you can see, we have this idle state, and we can simply choose what sort of animation we want to play in the state of that idle state. So it's really, really cool, really nifty. I'm going to go ahead and delete that because we don't need it. And of course, like I said, just make sure that for your right hand, just equip that the lowest point that you have on your right hand. So this right here, just drag it right in there like so. All right. So if we roll down a little bit, we have the private void equip item, right? And just like I said, you want to be able to add in that case for the weapon. So whenever we equip a weapon, instead of equipping the skinned mesh model, what we want to do is we want to create a weapon variable, and we're going to call that temp weapon. Then we're going to be casting to that weapon by using this equipment. So basically, we're going to make sure that this equipment is equal to a weapon. And from there, we're going to say game object called spawn, and we're going to make it equal to instantiate our temp weapon dot weapon prefab. And then we're going to assign the parent as our right hand. Then of course, we're going to just make sure that we're casting to it as a game object. Now, right here is the point where you would add in all the stuff that you would want to be able to adjust, like the weapon damage, the weapon appearance, whether it's enchanted or not. You know, that's sort of where you're going to be doing all your updating right then and there. We also want to be able to set up the animator runtime override controller. So we're going to say anim.runtime animator controller is equal to our temp weapon anim override control, just like so. Now on the remove equipment part, so if we go over to number 4, because that's the next index, we want to be able to run a for each loop on this object. So we're going to say for each loop transform child in the right hand, okay? And this is the reason why I said it has to be at the way bottom of your hierarchy of that hand. Because if it's not, say for instance, if we had this as our hand, it would destroy both this IK and it would also destroy the weapon too. So just keep that in mind. You want it at the lowest point of the hierarchy of that object. And then we're just going to say destroy child.game object. So there should only be one object that's destroyed. After that, we're going to set the runtime animator controller equal to our default controller. And then we're done. just like that. So if we head back over here into Unity, go over to your, let's go over to our Scriptable Objects folder. You're going to create a brand new folder called Weapons. So just create new folder, call it Weapons. Right click, you can go over to Create, go over to your, wherever you assigned it to be. So Inventory, New Weapon, and that's where you can write in your new weapon. From there, you can put in your description. You can also put in your icon like so. You can put in the value. Make sure that the stack size is equal to 1 because it still is an equipment. As for the static mesh, we do need to have a mesh here because whenever we drop the item, we want to be able to have this. Type is obviously a weapon. Now, we don't really need to assign a skin mesh model here unless you're using a skin mesh for the actual sword, which I hope that you're not. But if you are, then you can assign it there. But if you're not, don't worry about it. Now, the weapon prefab, this one you're going to have to create. We can go ahead and assign the controller right here like so. So just like that, it's pretty easy. So to create the weapon prefab, I can go over to our scene folder. What you want to do is create a brand new game object, and we're just going to call this prefab for now because, you know, why not? You can reset the position, all that good stuff. And what you want to do here is simply right click and actually not right click. Let's add in our static object. So static weapon, drag in our sword like so. Now obviously the sword is too big, so we can simply adjust the size like so and do whatever we need to do to be able to get it to the proper size. Okay, and you can change its rotation as well. Now keep in mind that whenever you parent it to the game object, it is going to be a little bit off, but that's okay. You can simply adjust it in the prefab, and then it will fix it inside of the actual game. So that is just a little hint. To be able to save it as a prefab, simply click, drag, and drop into your folder, and it will be saved as a prefab. Now obviously you want to save it into your actual prefabs folder. I created a folder called Weapons, and that's exactly where I stored mine. Now, if I actually open this up right here so you guys can see a little bit closer as to what I did here, I did adjust the position because the point in which this game object spawned, it didn't spawn exactly where I wanted it to be, hence the reason why I changed this position just a little bit and also its scale. And of course, I did the same thing with the weapon. So you can make your adjustments here, or you can make your adjustments inside the in-game environment, and then you can simply paste the information inside here later. Okay, so that's all that there is to do to be able to get it working. Just make sure that you go back over to your scriptable object, go over to your weapon, so weapon, make sure that you assign that prefab as well, and then once you got that done, it's ready to go. I can go ahead and delete that since we already have that set up. So now if we press play, we can visually see everything working the way it should be working. Now, in theory, this should work with any form of game objects. So if you have a bow, if you have a staff, right, you should be able to pull those off pretty easily. And like I said, you can add some more variables to your weapon class, which will give you the ability to adjust the stats and appearance on your actual weapon. So let's go ahead and head back in here. So we walk over here and we can equip, dequip, all that good stuff. And as you can see, his stance changes as well. So he's no longer just inside the normal idle state. He's actually adjusted based on what he's holding. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, check out some of my other videos. If you have any questions, make sure to leave those inside the comment section below. I'll be happy to get to those as soon as possible. If there's any form of tutorial that you guys want to be able to learn, make sure to leave those inside the comment section below. I'll be very happy to be able to take those. And yeah. Alright, I'll see you guys later. Bye.